One of the great things I've learned in my life, it is literally all about the people. It's all about the relationships that you make. So I think about every job that I've had. Every job that I've had has come through a relationship.
Welcome back to Case Studies. I'm with my friend Jared Sine. Jared has become a good friend, really good friends with Casey Adams, who, both of us just kind of revere as like somebody that's such an exceptional entrepreneur.
You're one of the best.
And so anyway, that was the connection. Over time, we've got to know each other, and I've got to hear your story. And I've been trying to get you on the show for a long time. And so it's fun to have you in from Texas to come, just kind of share your story. So
I'm really thrilled to be here. So this is a lot of fun.
Grateful to have you. So I want to go back to the beginning. So let's start at BYU Law School. When you came, talk to me a little bit about growing up. First, medical.
Yeah.
Like medical's been a part of your journey from day one. So talk to me about kind of like some of the medical challenges that you've had that have just been kind of a part of the process,
Yeah, look, it's one of those things, for me, it's below the surface. So most people look at me and they're like, oh, you're healthy, you look strong, you look, maybe a little thin, maybe a little short. But I just say I'm fun-sized. But, when I was born with a disease called Hirschsprung's disease. And that's where the ganglia in your colon, they just don't work. So you can't process things. So about 3 days after I was born, I had to have emergency surgery. I had about half my colon removed. And then
as a baby.
Oh yeah. This was 3 days old. And then 6 months later, they did another surgery. And so I just kind of grew up with that. I mean, I remember being a kid and being uncomfortable taking my shirt off because I had these big scars that ran across my body. And, when you're a kid, you don't want to be different, right? And people point those things out and they're like, oh, what is that? And you try and explain and they laugh or they think it's funny.
Our little guy right now, so we adopted these two little boys. And one of them, he's got like this belly button that like sticks out quite a ways.
Yeah. And
like literally the older one, we're at the pool the other day and he's like, hey, big belly button. Like this is like the 4-year-old yelling at the 2-year-old.
I know how that feels.
And so like what you're describing, I'm like, I'm witnessing that with my kids right now, so it's like.
Yeah, so you get a little sensitive to it, but over time you kind of get over it and those things. But yeah, it's been something that's kind of stuck with me for a long time. So, went to BYU for undergrad. After BYU, went back east, did an internship with Insight, which is Clayton Christensen's consulting firm, and then ended up going to law school.
So talk to me about Insight. We had Kim Clark on the show.
Kim's amazing.
Clayton Christensen changed my life. I remember reading How You Measure Life, and I went out and I took a class for him on disruptive innovation.
Yeah. And
this was, it ended up being a couple of years before he passed away, but he was just a giant. He was a giant among men. Like he was so wise, but he was so kind. Talk to me about that internship and just that experience.
Yeah. So look, Clay, I would not be where I am today if it wasn't for Clay Christensen. So on my mission, he was one of the members of the mission presidency.
Because you were in Boston, right?
I was in Boston.
Yeah, I remember now.
So he was teaching one of his students who actually was a co-founder of Insight in his home. And I just was fortunate to be there. And so I had the opportunity to help teach this person who ended up joining the church and co-founded Insight with him. But just sitting there learning from Clayton Christensen and just seeing him in action as not only this larger than life intellectual, but even more importantly, this just amazing person. He was the kind of guy who just made you feel like you could do anything. Right? I remember going to his funeral and sitting in there, and there were thousands of people stuffed into this chapel, and they all felt the same way, like Clayton Christensen had changed their lives. And he really changed mine. I had gotten sick on my mission, going back to the health challenges, and I got reassigned to Boston. And for me, that was a hard thing when it happened.
Because you started out where?
I started out in the Philippines.
Okay.
Started in the Philippines, learned Tagalog, was really enjoying my mission there, ended up getting sent home. It was one of those really challenging things where you just want to do what you've been called to do, you've been asked to do, and you can't do it because your body just won't let you. So got reassigned to Boston, and I was in my mind thinking, why am I here? I was in this crazy cool foreign country, meeting all of these interesting people, and now I'm in Boston. And it turned out one of the reasons I believe was so that I can meet Clay and have my life influenced by Clay. So I meet Clay, we teach this co-founder of Innosight, and then a year and a half later, I end up going out for this internship and end up staying for almost a year.
Wow.
And just to sit there and listen to Clay and the way he would think and the way he would ask questions in order to get to the right answer. You know, Clay would always talk about, it's all about asking the right questions. If you ask the right questions, you're going to get to the right answer.
Yeah.
And then he was all about how do we apply these disruptive theories to not just, you know, business, but to medicine, to education. You know, even back then, he had all these ideas about all the places that he could apply his disruptive theories. And so just learning from him the way he was not only an incredible intellectual, but just an incredible human being. He cared about people. He wanted to see them successful. And he just invested in people.
I think about how influential those leaders are young in your career. They're obviously all at all different points. A great leader is highly influential, but those early years when you're kind of developing your own leadership thesis on this is the type of leader I want to be in, this type of professional I want to be, and even what career track you want to go into, I can't imagine a better mentor in the world to be able to start than a Clayton Christensen type leader. You know what I mean?
Oh, look, I mean, one of my big regrets was, you know, early on in my career, I'd reach out to him a lot for advice. As I got older and further away, he was super busy. I was super busy. And so I probably hadn't talked to Clay for about 5 years.
Lost touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, after he passed away, I came home after the funeral and I said to my wife, I said, we need to write down on a piece of paper, who are the 10 people or 15 people that if we didn't talk to for 5 years and something happened to them, we would regret
feel really bad
for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
And that was a real big wake-up call for us, you know, in terms of let's identify those people and be really deliberate about that list of people. And that list has actually gotten a lot bigger.
Yeah.
But, you know, he was such a great mentor.
I think about this country song, I think it's a Tim McGraw song that's kind of popular right now. It's Standing Room Only.
I don't know that I've heard it. I need to listen to more country.
Well, anyway, it resonates with me when I think about like what legacy do I want to go leave?
Yeah.
That when I pass, you know, did I create enough value in the world that funeral, it's standing room only.
Yeah.
That so many people, and that was Clay's legacy. I mean, when he passed, it was standing room only. It was, you know, everybody, you know, making the pilgrimage to go show their respects to a man that touched their life. And for me, you know, I never knew Clay.
Yeah.
I read his book, but I read it at a point in my life that I was just at a crossroads. We'd just sold to Blackstone.
Yeah.
And I think I was 28 years old, and I got my first liquidity event. And it was this kind of windfall. But it was also a time where it was like, what do I want to do in the future? And Todd Santiago gave me that book, How You Measure Life. And I remember reading it, and it just impacted me differently at that exact stage. And I remember I'd made course corrections in my life that have benefited me the last, 12, 13 years from that book.
Yeah, look, it's interesting when I start a new role, wherever it's at, whatever company it's at, that is one of the things that I talk about with my team. At the end of the day, there's a lot of things that we can end up doing that, lead to success or lead to opportunity. But if we're not thinking about the individual, if we're not thinking about how we're making the world a bit better, how we're making our teams a bit better, how we're making our families a bit better, I just think you're missing the point, right? We can all make a lot of money. We can all find a lot of success.
And we'll get to that later, but the founder or the CEO that you work with right now shares those same values, right? I know me and you have talked about that, and that was something that you and him were always so connected on, was kind of those like life and family values of like what really matters. Yeah,
look, there's a great Time magazine article that just came out on our CEO, Aman Bhutani. He and we've been friends since I was working at Expedia. We did a couple of deals and worked really closely together. And that's right. He shares those same principles. It's all about one team. It's all about making sure you take care of your family. It's all about making sure that you invest in the people. And that's how you get to the right outcomes and the right results. And so, having people who share those core principles, those core beliefs, whether it's, a belief in God or a belief in taking care of, other human beings, like those things can really bind you together. And so we have a real affinity when it comes to our philosophies of how we lead and how we think about people.
Super cool. So you came back to BYU, ended up going into law school in a competitive program, right?
Yeah.
Like my understanding, and you can kind of fill in the gaps, to be top of the class, that it gets really competitive, kind of in any law school, but specifically with BYU. And a lot of the best opportunities come to the people that are top in class. Like, explain a little bit about like how that works and how the competition works and why it matters.
Yeah, look, so for BYU Law School, if you go to a top 10 law school, you think about the top 75% of the class are probably getting those big law jobs. At BYU, those go to like the top 10%. So if you're in that top 10%, you can probably go almost anywhere you want. But if you're not, you're going to be scrapping and fighting and those things for jobs. And so you do have to work real hard, and there is a lot of competition, and it's an intense environment for sure.
Yeah.
But the thing that I found about BYU that was actually pretty amazing was, even though it was an intense environment, like when the chips were down and things got tough, people would rush to your aid. So, when I was at BYU Law School, I started, September of 2004. And we get about 2 weeks in, and one night I'm studying with my buddies. I've got this great study group, and I start feeling real sick. And the next thing I know, I'm getting checked into the hospital for emergency surgery. And then the next thing I know, I'm missing 6 of the next 8 weeks of law school.
Crap.
And so if you think about it from a law school perspective, super competitive, you need to end up in the top 10%.
Like, it feels like an insurmountable burden. 6 weeks, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you think about your typical semester is 15 weeks long, 16 weeks long. So you're missing a huge chunk of that. And the amazing thing to me was the way that these people that I'd only known for 2 weeks rallied to my side. I would have people coming to my hospital bedside, reading case books to me. I had professors come in, talk to me about, how to think about the exams or things that were coming up. Just amazing to think of the competition that was there. We all wanted to be in the top 10%, but the fact that people were willing to go out of their way to make sure that, I could pass. Or I could get through.
I think that like is one of the special things about BYU. Like, I didn't go to BYU. I teach up at BYU. My wife is doing her MBA right now.
Yeah.
And she raves about the professors.
Yeah.
That, like, just how much they care. And I think there's something about, and it could be the religious aspect, it could be whatever it is, but people who are at BYU really want to be at BYU. There's something that's calling them to be there, and they really like it. And, what you're describing is kind of that. It's, people that, it's almost more than education. It matters a lot to them.
Yeah, look, I think that is one of the great things about BYU is people who are there, they really get it, right? When I think about my class for BYU Law, we had tons of really smart kids who could have gone anywhere they wanted to for law school.
Wanted to be there.
But they wanted to be there, and it was important for them to be there. And so that was an incredible experience for me. It was super difficult, super painful. Had emergency surgery that, was really hard, then ended up having an abscess and other things, just not something you wish on anybody.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, having those people rally to your side was amazing. But the other thing that came out of it is I learned the importance of working real hard. When I got out of the hospital, I had about a month before finals, and I'd missed essentially 2 months. Even though I'd kind of snuck a week in, I actually had gone back to school for a week and then had to go back to the hospital, which was pretty painful. I had a month to catch up. And so I literally was in the law school library from 6 a.m. to midnight every single day except for Sundays.
Are you married to Ruth at this time?
Yeah, Ruth and I were married. Yeah.
Okay.
Ruth and I had gotten married in May of 2004. Law school started. And so she thought, like, crap, my husband is going to be dead, and we've only been married for 3 months.
Did she fully, know what she was signing up for with, the health? Because,
no.
Did you know?
I didn't know.
Or was that, it kind of hadn't really had it, and then it flared up in college?
That's right. Yeah, I hadn't really experienced at least nothing life-threatening. I'd had issues throughout my life. It's just challenging when you have a surgery like that.
I remember so I have hemophilia. I've got a bleeding disorder. And I remember like me and Chels are, dating, getting married. And I was like, hey, FYI, like I've got a bleeding disorder. I could die sometimes. I just feel like I want to prep you. Like, if you got like any like reservations, now's a good time to click the eject button because, this is just part of the package. And we've had like some different, flare-ups with it over time. But the physical's fascinating to me because that just has kind of been the hand that you've been dealt.
Yeah, and look, I didn't give Ruth any warnings, so she didn't get the chance to pull the ejector, button. But fortunately, she's been there through every one of these traumatic situations. Whether it was in law school, I had one last summer,
recently, right?
Yeah. Last July, was up with my daughter. She was training with a professional soccer team. She's a good little soccer player. And I just ended up getting real sick and had to check into the emergency room up in Portland. Didn't have any friends, didn't have any family, and ended up being stuck there for 3 weeks after emergency surgery where they removed, a big chunk of my colon. So I've got about 20 centimeters left. But,
Crazy.
it's all good. She came up, was there, by my side every day for those 3 weeks, making sure that I had what I needed, making sure I was taken care of. So, she didn't sign up for it, but man, she's just
bossed
a rock.
it up. Yeah,
just
for sure. And that, obviously like Chels, like admires Ruth so much. Like she's just a boss. Like
it's mutual.
She's like tremendous. Like she's a strong woman. Like you can just feel it when she comes in. Like she's just very confident and like, she's just a force. And so you guys are fun together just because you're both like so strong.
We appreciate that.
Talk to me about the next stages in the career because you go do, InnoSight with Clayton Christensen.
Yeah.
More of an entrepreneurial venture.
Yeah.
You're working in venture and you're working in, buying companies and different things. The next stage was like kind of hardcore law, right?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah. Like you went in and you practiced.
Yeah. So I, finished my years up at BYU. I was the second student from BYU ever to go to a firm called Cravath, which is the top law firm in the country. So it was.
How's that even happen? Like,
one of the great things I've learned in my life, it is literally all about the people. It's all about the relationships that you make. So I think about every job that I've had. Every job that I've had has come through a relationship.
So talk to me about that because I think this is like a really important principle that I think when you're young, you don't fully grasp.
Yeah.
People say it casually, like your network is your net worth, or like who you meet is going to be more important. But what you're describing is that, like, you obviously have to be capable. You've got to be able to perform, but that's not everything.
That's right. No, look, 1,000%. It truly is about the people you connect with. So, Dave Marriott, who was a friend of my sister's and her husband when they lived in New York, he was at Cravath. He was a partner in the litigation team, and he had decided, you know what, I want to get some BYU students, so I'm going to come interview some BYU students. Since we had that family connection, we connected. He helped me get a call back to Cravath, and again, this is where the competency piece comes in, right? I had to perform. I had to show up at the interview.
You got to be real.
That's right. I had to make sure that I performed well, and fortunately, got the offer and then got the opportunity. But look, at the end of the day, if it's not for that relationship,
the door's not even.
The door may not even be open. That's exactly right. So the relationships are critical. So if you play the story forward, I ended up spending 3 years at Cravath, working 3,000 plus hours a year, crazy hours. I mean, I remember my first month, and one of the boundaries when you talk about work-life balance that I put in for myself was I wasn't going to work on Sundays. One of the nice things about being in a place like New York is our, Jewish friends have set a really nice precedent that they don't work on Saturdays. So when I went in there and said, hey, I don't work on Sundays, that's the one day, but I'll get up at midnight Sunday night and start working again.
Wow.
They respected that and they appreciated that. So did that for 3 years, worked lots and lots of hours. And then my wife and I wanted to have a third kid. We're living in a 400 square apartment with 2 kids already. So you really can't do 3 kids in New York. It's 2010. We're in the middle of the Great Recession.
It's hard.
It's hard
to have a job, especially a white collar job at that point. You're counting your blessings.
That's exactly right. Yeah, counting your blessings. And my wife and I say, look, we want to have a third kid. We can't do that in New York. So Cravath doesn't have an office in Los Angeles where her family is. So I'm going to reach out to one of the guys that I connected with when I was interviewing for law firm jobs back in law school, who was a partner at Latham & Watkins, and said, hey, Richard, I know we've kept in touch over the years. I've sent you Christmas cards. You sent me Christmas cards. And we've talked every now and again. I'm looking to come to LA. Is there any chance that I can, interview at Latham? And he said, well, look, we're on a hiring freeze, but let me go ask some questions. So again, relationships matter.
Yep.
Richard goes ask the question. They said, hey, we'll take a chance on an interview with the guy from Cravath. I go out there, again, have to be competent. Interviews go well. I get the opportunity there. But, all about that relationship. If I didn't have that relationship with Richard, and if I hadn't kept in touch with him, I wouldn't have been able to get that job.
My head has just been spinning like the last couple of months. We've got this hire, Sandlot hire, that a similar process took place. She reaches out, says, I really admire your firm. I'd like to work there.
Yeah.
We say we're not hiring. 2 other people reach out to us on behalf of her that we really respect, that kind of they vouch for, like in a very assertive way, just say, hey, you'd be crazy not to hire her.
Yeah.
So we take a look. We have her go interview the whole team. And since she's come on, she's absolutely crushed it for us. She's done so well. We wouldn't have even looked if she wouldn't have had those relationships that were willing to put their neck out for her and go open the door. And so I think about that, and I'm like, that matters a lot. Like one, reputation. You've got to like make sure that you do right by people and, that you do a good job. But second, it's the effort of sending the Christmas cards and making sure that you foster some of these relationships, not knowing where they're going to lead, but just knowing, it's important to have people that are friends.
Yeah, look, I totally agree. And you play the story forward. I go work at Expedia for a couple of years, and I get an opportunity to interview for a GC job. Mind you, I've only been out of law school
and
8.5 years. GC means general counsel. So you're the head lawyer for the entire company.
Yep.
And so there's a public company down in Dallas, Match Group, which owns Tinder and Hinge, or it didn't own Hinge at the time, but Tinder and Match.com and a bunch of other brands. And I'm probably the youngest person applying for that job. I remember sitting down with the CFO.
The GC job is kind of it.
It's it is it. Like your C-suite.
Yeah, like that is as high as you can go outside of like almost switching fields and taking like a business role.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's the top of the top on the legal, ladder.
Yeah.
At a public company, no less, right? So you've kind of, made it's the wrong term, because there's still a lot of work to do when you get there.
But that's a big role.
It's a big role.
Yeah.
And I remember sitting down with Match Group's CFO during my interview, and he has my resume sitting there on the table, and he has the number 8.5 written in the upper right-hand corner. And I sit down, he circles that, and he says, Jared, do you know what that is? And I'm like, I have no idea what that number is. He's like, that's the number of years that you've been practicing law. Why on earth should we give you an opportunity? And I talked about my experience and a number of other things, but ultimately what it came down to was Dara Khosrowshahi, who was the CEO over at Expedia at the time. I'd been able to work with him on a number of big, interesting acquisitions. And so the CEO at Match Group was a really good friend of Dara's. And he reached out and he said, what do you think of Jared? And because Dara said good things,
wow.
Here I am as this very young lawyer, I was capable, but very young, and got this great opportunity, again, because of a relationship.
Me and you are in this process right now. There's a athlete on BYU soccer team.
Yep.
And it's you reaching out saying, hey, she's looking for a marketing role. And I've never met her.
Yeah.
Have no idea if she's good or bad. But I'm going to take it serious because you're reaching out. And I think that is the point of what you're describing is, man, it's important to do a great job wherever you're at.
That's right.
And you just never know what that's going to lead into, but just make sure that you do right by everybody. And you create a tremendous amount of value. I think about you at Cravath. If you did a bad job there,
yeah,
everybody's going to know really quick. That's going to be one or two conversations, and they're going to know, hey, that's, he didn't show up, or he was, wasn't paying the price. Anyway, that stuff's so fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, look, and then the last move that I'll just share is, so while I was at Expedia, I worked real closely with my current CEO, Mon Bhutani. We went out, we did some pretty phenomenal M&A deals together where we took these unique structures.
M&A is mergers and acquisitions.
So while I was at Expedia, when I got there, Expedia was about a $3 billion market cap company. Over the next 4 years, we did $10 billion worth of deals. When I left,
you guys just like exploded.
When I left, Expedia was worth $20 billion. A lot of that came off the back of those M&A deals. We bought, HomeAway VRBO, which everybody knows, household name. What a lot of people don't know is, Expedia owns not only Orbitz and Travelocity, but Hotels.com, Hotwire, and a number of other brands. Many of those deals we did while I was there off the back of this technology platform that Amon had built.
Yep.
But we developed this really great friendship and relationship. And I remember, spending many late nights working with him. And I remember one point in particular where we're working through a pretty tricky provision in the deal because it's this partnership deal that has got to work for the next X number of years that we're doing with Travelocity. And as I'm charting it up on the whiteboard, he turns to me and he's like, "You write legal documents like I write code." He's like, "You see the business outcome and the business need and can predict that X number of years down the road. And you're building, legal document that way that will, essentially allow the business outcomes to continue to persist for the next forever."
You're not going to go sabotage it by doing something wrong, just like code.
That's right.
If you write bad code, it's like you're going to have that debt
That's
forever.
Right. You're going to have that debt
either
forever.
To redo it. Same thing with legal. It's like, that's fascinating.
So we built this relationship. Fast forward a number of years, and look, we stayed in really close contact. At every turn in our careers, we would talk to each other and get each other's advice. He goes on to be the CEO of GoDaddy. And then, because of that relationship, I now have the opportunity to not only be the chief legal officer at GoDaddy, but I'm the chief strategy and legal officer. So I'm overseeing strategy, corporate development, strategic partnerships. And it's just
because
an incredible
of that
role because of that relationship, because he saw me in action as more than just, this is the legal guy. He could see what I could bring to the table from a business perspective, from seeing around corners and from structuring the right deals and identifying the right targets. So, again, it's all about these relationships. You never know where they're going to go. You never know where they're going to take you, but they're so worth investing in.
Talk to me about the different stages of the career and when you knew it was time to go. You know what I mean? I think that's especially with aspiring, ambitious people.
Yeah.
There's this, what is the right track, whatever it is. And I don't think it exists. I think it's a personal journey for everybody.
Yeah.
But you obviously you were at places enough to get real meaningful experience and go create meaningful value. But you've also been at a lot of different places, and it feels like every time that you've left one, you've upgraded significantly going to the next one. Talk to me about how your mindset thinks about that and just how you're weighing those decisions.
Yeah, look, there are a couple of things that are really important as I'm thinking about those things. First, it's, am I still challenged? Am I still enjoying what I'm doing? When I start getting bored in a job, that's when I know that I either need more responsibility in that job because I've kind of got everything else established and set up the way I need it to be, or I need a new challenge. It's time to go. And so, whether that was, leaving Cravath was a little bit different because that was driven by family decisions.
Lifestyle, yeah.
But when I was leaving Latham, that was totally a big piece of it was, okay, I've done every kind of deal you can imagine from a lawyer perspective at a firm.
Because I can only imagine those reps were invaluable. Just seeing so many deals.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, look, we were going literally deal to deal to deal. There would be times where I was closing a deal every week, which means I was working on 5 or 6 deals at a time, right? So the reps that you get, they're phenomenal, and you learn a ton.
And seeing the structure and seeing the nuance and all that, it's got to be so insightful to realize, holy crap, this one little thing unlocked so much value. And it could have been so easily missed. You know what I mean?
That's right.
And
look, and one of the things that I realized pretty quickly was, man, if I'm just a lawyer at the outside law firm, I actually don't get weigh in on any of the really important decisions, like how much are we going to pay and what's the real strategic mission behind or the deal thesis behind why we're doing this deal. So that was one of the big reasons I wanted to go in-house. But one of the questions that I always ask myself before going, to make that next career decision is, how many doors is this next move going to open and how many doors is it going to close, right? So when I took the job at Cravath out of law school, I knew every door would be open, right?
Yeah.
It's the number one law firm in the country. Wherever I want to go after that, as long as I do well and comport myself well, I'm going to have opportunities.
You're going to have all sorts of opportunities. So early, it's about having more doors open.
That's exactly right. And look, it was the same thing when I left Latham. I said, okay, if I go to Expedia, how are they, what's their reputation? What kind of respect do they have out there in the ecosystem from a tech company perspective? Yeah. Because, again, my goal is to climb as high as I can, as soon as I can. And so I got to go to a place where I'm going to have, a lot of respect and a lot of reputational advantage. But I also want to go to a place where I'm going to have the right reps, right? And I looked at Expedia's history, and they had a really strong history of mergers and acquisitions. They bought a ton of companies.
Which is what you want to do. Like that was kind of like, I need to be in the growth path. Like,
That's right. We got to be doing deals because that's what I'm good at, and that's where I want to get my reps, and it's a lot of fun.
Yep.
And so I knew Expedia, they'd done a ton of deals. So when I went there, it was no surprise that over those next 4 years, we did 10 or so deals a year, ranging from, very small deals in the 20s of millions to, billion plus. I think HomeAway was $3.4 billion, $3.3 billion dollars. Big deals.
Yeah.
That were game changing
for the
Expedia.
company. Yeah.
And look, that's the third thing that I think about when I take these jobs is, what kind of an imprint can I have? What kind of a legacy can I leave at that company? And so when I look back at Expedia and I think about, okay, when I got there, they owned Expedia and Hotels.com and Hotwire and a couple others. When I left, they owned Orbitz and they owned Travelocity and they owned HomeAway VRBO.
Just a way better company.
It's a way better company, a way different company. If you think about it, if Expedia doesn't do that HomeAway VRBO deal, once the pandemic hits and no one's staying in hotels, if they don't have that home rental arm to their business, imagine what might have happened to that Expedia business if that deal had not been done. They had their own struggles that came along. They had to take some private equity financing and some other things. But fortunately, that HomeAway VRBO arm just took off and really helped them. And so I look back and I can say, wow, look at the impact that I had when I was at Expedia. And, again, I didn't do it myself. It's about the people. We were surrounded by great people. But to be able to have that impact on a company is amazing. And, you look at Match Group. I went there when Match Group was just, barely public. They'd been public all in 9 months, had about $1 billion of revenue. They were a $3 billion market cap company. And over the course of my time there, we grew them all the way to $50 billion. And then, of course, a couple years post-pandemic, they kind of came down a little bit. But exhilarating ride, making big.
Invaluable experience. Like
totally.
You can't teach that anywhere. Right. You kind of have to do it. There's just not that many groups doing that many deals. Like you kind of got in like this wave, you know what I mean? Where you were just in the action.
Yeah.
And you have been for most of your career, which is like so exciting.
Look, it's a lot of fun. And I think one of the things I love about M&A is just the creativity that comes along with it. So, you look at Match Group and today, Tinder has historically been kind of the crown jewel asset, but one of the new asset everybody's talking about is Hinge. Well, that's a deal we did for rock bottom price through a creative structure back when they were worth almost nothing. In fact, they were close to going out of business. We identified this asset. We came up with this really creative structure that allowed us to invest and kind of test our way in, similar to what we'd done with Travelocity at Expedia years before. So again, taking those lessons.
Less risk. How do you minimize the risk?
That's right. Having great pattern recognition and saying, oh, this is a very similar opportunity. Let's structure it similarly. And then seeing, hey, we apply our playbook to this business and now it's accelerating really fast. Let's dump some more money into it. And now, look, there's no public valuation for Hinge, but it's all the talk for Match Group.
But
Match Group's a 10 plus.
Driving a lot of the value in there. Like that's so cool. So, and when we met, that's where you were at. Yeah. And you were kind of thriving in that role. Since then, you've transitioned to GoDaddy.
Yeah.
And talk to me a little bit about GoDaddy and specifically about that decision. When I hear GoDaddy, I think of early 2000s, Danica Patrick, kind of advertising built to shock.
Yep.
You know, they were just trying to, and they kind of dominate that market of.
And we don't use the word dominate, but yes, they do well in that market.
They do really well in that market.
Yeah.
But there's so much more than that. And I think that was when you were walking me through, I remember hearing that and being like, that's an interesting, it feels like this other option is more in your sweet spot.
Yeah.
But when you were kind of explaining me the GoDaddy opportunity, it got me really excited just to like see what was in front of you. So talk to me about how that opportunity got presented.
Yeah.
And what you saw in opportunity to go like leverage your skill set to go make a dent on that platform.
Yeah, look, it's interesting because my viewpoint on GoDaddy was very similar to yours back before I knew anything about it. But after Aman had gone there, I just know what Aman Bhutani can do and what he has done in his career. I saw him do it at Expedia. I knew he would go to GoDaddy and do something very similar, which is build a great technology platform, instill a lot of discipline, instill an experimentation mindset, right? Where it's all about let's test and let's learn and let's let the data drive the decisions.
Yeah.
In order to make sure that we're growing in the right way. So just the fact that he was there, number one.
That was kind of like enough for you to take a hard look.
Enough for me to take a hard look.
Yeah.
And then when you start peeling back the layers, you realize, oh my gosh, GoDaddy is so much more than domains. That's a great, big, strong piece of their business. But it's interesting. One of the functions I lead is strategic partnerships. And recently we were in this conversation with someone, I can't name the company, but household name, everybody would know it, meeting with their head of strategy. And we have this little sizzle reel that we show that demonstrates all the capabilities of GoDaddy. And after watching that 90-second sizzle reel, he said to me, Jared, you have changed my perspective on GoDaddy in 90 seconds. Because what we do today is we really empower small businesses, the micro businesses, the ones that are really the lifeblood of our economy. We power them from start to finish. You get your, what we call your identity, which is through domain name, your email, to your presence, which is your website, all the way to your commerce, right? And for these small businesses, this is their first time doing those things. And so if we can make it seamless, if we can make it easy, if we can make it so that you don't have to really think about it and make you successful, it's game changing. And, a lot of people are talking about AI today and how AI is going to change the game, but nobody really knows how. You look at all these different places where people are trying to apply it, whether it's in chatbots or whatever else. GoDaddy, I think we've really figured out a place where AI can sing. And that is, we've developed this technology, we call it Arrow. And what it is it's our essential, business partner that's AI powered for you. And so you come and it can build a site for you and it can do logos, it can do all the content generation stuff that, of course is table stakes if you're going to use AI. But beyond that, it can guide you to the next thing that you need to do. Wow. So you built your site. Now you need a logo. Now you need an entity. So here we can help you get your LLC formed. Now you need to think about commerce, and here's the right thing. And now you need to think about marketing. And it's all automatic and it's all there to take you every step of the way.
It's incredible.
And for a small business owner, that's game changing, right?
You think about the difference today of being a small business owner, specifically in tech or software or any of these things, and the opportunity that exists today that didn't a decade ago, 2 decades ago. You think about the barriers of entry.
Sure.
The capital barriers of entry 10 years ago, 20 years ago versus today. And what you're describing is just accelerating that. It makes those barriers of entry so small where if you have an idea and a little bit of capital, you can have a lot of the same capabilities or a lot of the same resources as some of these, some of the biggest firms in the world.
Look, and to me, that's the real goal. As we talk about, our entrepreneurs, we talk about trying to make opportunity accessible to everybody.
You just wonder what that's going to do to productivity.
Oh, it should do this.
It feels like there's going to be an explosion of productivity just based off of more people / founders being able to have access. They can get further down the road with less.
That's right. Launching a business today with GoDaddy is easier than it's ever been. And that to me is what is exciting because we truly are empowering these people. And waking up every day, I'm an entrepreneur at heart, even though I've never started a venture. I've helped sell many, I've helped start many, I've helped buy many over the course of time. But being able to wake up every day and think about, I'm helping that next great business get off the ground.
So talk to me about that, because I think entrepreneur is a big word.
Yeah.
And I think, it means different things to different people. But I would look at your career and say you've been extremely entrepreneurial. But you've never been the founder.
Yep, never been the founder.
I think of, a friend of mine that I teach up at BYU with, his name's Corbin Church.
Yeah.
Corbin's is like
great.
the day he was at BYU, he's never had a job. Like he would be what I would say is the purest of entrepreneur, or a Todd Peterson's.
Sure.
Like they never had a job.
Yeah.
Where for me, that wasn't me. I worked for a company for 17, 18 years.
Yeah.
And it was so valuable for me. I don't think emotionally I was ready for the weight of what it is being the founder. I had the opportunity to be extremely entrepreneurial in that environment. You know what I mean? And so what you're describing is kind of that. You've taken extremely entrepreneurial roles, but you've never been the one that has to sign on leases or make payroll, or you know what I mean? And so talk to me about that, and even career advice that you would give to somebody kind of looking at both tracks.
Yeah, look, I think both tracks can lead to really interesting, really exciting places. Part of it's a bit of a risk decision, and candidly, part of that comes from my upbringing. My dad was actually pretty entrepreneurial, founded a lot of businesses, and watched them all go belly up.
Yeah.
And seeing that happen as a kid, you kind of step back and you say, you know what?
Want some more stability.
I can follow that track, or I can go be the right-hand man of a founder or a CEO, or I can go be entrepreneurial within an organization and really help it do amazing things without necessarily taking on that risk. And look, I think true founders would probably say, well, that's the difference between you and a true founder, is a true founder is willing to take on that extra element of risk. Look, at the end of the day, we all take on a lot of risk, but I have a ton of respect for those founders who are willing to kind of throw everything at a problem and, essentially try and solve it. And I have had some interesting entrepreneurial experiences. So when I was a first year at Cravath, me and a couple of buddies, we decided to buy 5 movie theaters here in Salt Lake City. Which was kind of crazy. We would have our partnership meetings at midnight New York time, because that was the only time that I could carve out, because the rest of the day I was busy doing law firm stuff. But we ended up taking those businesses, we bought them out of bankruptcy for almost nothing, and we doubled the value and sold them 6 months later. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Took my $100,000, every penny that we had, and I said to Ruth, hey, are you willing to risk this? And she said, yeah. So we threw it in and doubled our money in 6 months, and that was great. But I also still had a paying job on the side, right? I knew that if that 100,000,
but that for me mattered a lot.
Yeah.
I could be so much more aggressive with my investments, knowing that my job was going to replenish the coffers.
Yeah, that's right.
Where if you don't have that coming in, it's a different level of burning your boat. And so I don't think there's a right way or wrong way, but I do think having a strategy matters, and knowing why you're making which trade-offs.
Yeah. And again, you do have to go in eyes wide open, right? You have to go in eyes wide open of the trade-offs you're making, which is, look, if you're going to go work for a company, you can do really, really well, and you can have some great exits and some great opportunities. And I've seen those, but not to the same extent as a founder, right? If you're the founder, you're putting more skin in the game, you're going to have a bigger outsized return than other folks, but you also have bigger, more outsized downside, right? But one of the things that I learned through that movie theater business was just what it's like to take risk and what it's like to be an entrepreneur, true entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And it helped me relate a lot more to not only the clients I had when I was at law firms, but once I got into the business, I thought about it through that lens. And that's one of the things
capital allocation lens.
Capital allocation.
And that's just different. Alex Dunn had this, he was talking to me, and he said, I get asked this question a lot about hey, what's the best way to become an entrepreneur? And he's like, the best way to become an entrepreneur is to become an entrepreneur.
That's right.
You learn in the doing. And I would probably say the same thing with you. You were doing M&A for other people, but it's very different when it's your entire net worth.
Yep.
That you're saying, hey, Ruth, are you ready to like put our chips in the middle on this? I've done my, like, I think this is going to be a great outcome.
Yeah.
But this is everything we have.
Yeah.
You definitely learn your stuff more when you're risking capital. You know what I mean?
And you care a lot more. I mean, I remember structuring that deal as we were selling.
Yeah.
You know, we went through every term with a fine tooth comb, way different than I did even for my clients, because this was my dollars, right?
This
I had
mattered
to make it mattered.
lot. Yeah.
Every piece of it mattered.
So fascinating.
So
So go to the best deal you ever did, or the best deals you've ever done.
yeah.
And then I want to hear about the ones that didn't work and where you screwed it up.
Yeah. And look, we all screw deals up. Of
course.
You know, I've actually been very fortunate in terms of the deals I've done at public companies. The overwhelming majority have been super successful. And so I'd say the two best deals that I worked on, one was the Travelocity deal that we did at Expedia. And look, this was a deal where Travelocity and Expedia had talked for years and years and years about, hey, you know, should we do a deal? Should we not do a deal? And ultimately we said, look, not sure if a deal is the right thing to do, but let's try something a little bit different. Let's do a partnership where effectively Travelocity, we're going to take all your tech stack and take that over. We're going to take all your travel supply. We're going to take that over. All that's going to be powered by Expedia. You do marketing and you control that, and we'll kind of test into it. So we came up with this really novel partnership structure that actually worked incredibly well for us at Expedia. And it actually won, there's a rag in the travel industry called Focusrite. They do all of kind of the awards for the industry.
Yeah.
It won the best deal of the decade, the Travelocity deal. Yeah, so it was a really, really great deal for Expedia. And after running the deal for 2 years, we realized there's so much opportunity here. We're going to exercise our call option and just buy out the rest of the Travelocity assets, bring them onto our platform. And so that was an incredibly successful deal for Expedia. And to this day, from what I understand, is still very successful. So that was a great deal. And then I also talked a little bit about the Hinge deal.
Yeah.
You know, that was one that we recognized this was a company that was failing. They were having a hard time getting any other capital. So we went in, we were able to kind of dictate the terms, get a really good structure, but also give that founder team an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Like ultimately, if we don't step in, they go bankrupt. And so we step in, we see some things we like. We understand we've got a playbook at Match that we can apply and we can help them grow. And look, it's been a huge opportunity for that team, but it's also been a great success story for Match Group. It's become one of the most successful dating apps out there. It's the go-to app today from where it was, you know, when we bought it in 2017, just this fledgling little app that had a moment of success, had almost failed, and then we're able to work with the team to bring it back to success.
Talk to me about the ones that didn't work, or one that you look back and said, I dotted my I's and crossed my T's, and I would have bet anything that this was just going to be a raging success, and it didn't. And what did you miss?
You know, look, I'll be totally candid. There has not been a deal where I sat there and I said, this is going to be a raging success that turned out to be a total failure. There have been deals that I felt that way about that were okay deals.
Yeah.
The deals that I felt skittish about turned out to be deals that didn't work out very well.
Yeah.
And there were deals in many instances where I had essentially raised the red flag and said, hey, are we sure we want to do this?
Is that kind of the cautionary tale, is like, if you're just not fully in love with it, like you're probably not going to be more in love with it later? Like you...
Totally. Look, to me, that is it. You have to be very dispassionate about the deals. And you have to, if you're so wedded to a deal, or you really feel like you need a deal in order to hit your numbers, in order to hit your growth targets, or whatever it might be.
It's the wrong motivation.
It's the wrong motivation.
Yeah.
So you've got to dig in, understand everything about that business, and really believe.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't guarantee success, but if you've done enough deals and you've had enough experience and you're smart enough, you know, my perspective is, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you're not going to have a deal that just goes belly up. But look, I have had deals that have not gone according to plan. But most of those were deals where I raised red flags. And candidly, that was one of the reasons why I was so excited about this role at GoDaddy, is, you know, you go from being a stakeholder to being kind of the stakeholder in terms of decision making.
It allows you to lead the music.
That's right. So I can say, hey, let's not do this deal. Hey, I see these numbers are plateauing, and I know that they're telling us they're going to have growth for the next X number of years. And I know that they have some reasoning why those numbers are plateauing.
But it's telling a different story.
To me, that's telling me a different story, and we should pull back from this deal.
Fascinating.
And so today, as the head of, you know, head of strategy and corporate development and strategic partnerships. When I say that, that has a different meaning than if I'm just the M&A lawyer doing the deal, right?
Yeah.
So
talk to me about faith, and talk to me about how that fits in the mix. Specifically, you'd referenced some examples earlier, and I've actually heard your daughter reference this, where she at a young age kind of said, I'm not playing on Sundays.
Yeah.
Which, in soccer, you kind of saying, I'm going to limit my opportunities.
Yeah.
Everybody
everybody said, look, you don't play on Sundays, you'll never achieve your goals. She's the only kid I know of that has never played on a Sunday, yet has been a part of every youth national team that she was eligible to be called up for until she got injured. Has never had to play a game on Sunday in her career, whether at the youth national team level or otherwise. And look, I believe God opens doors when you decide to put him first. And for me, that meant not working on Sundays. So when I was in law school, I made a decision. I'm not going to study on Sundays. I'm not going to put in any time on Sundays. Sunday is, the Lord's day, and I'm going to respect it that way. Got to Cravath, made that same commitment. It was tough. I was told you'll never be a partner at Cravath because you're not working on Sundays. That was fine with me. I didn't want to be a partner at a law firm anyway. I ultimately knew I wanted to go in-house. But throughout my career, I've worked 4 hours cumulatively on Sunday. And most of that happened when we had a bomb threat at one of our offices that I had to deal with. And, my ox truly was in the mire, so I had to take care of that. But for me, it's been a huge blessing. I'll share one experience in particular. There was a company here in Utah, hot tech company, growing real fast. I'd interviewed for a VP job there to be the assistant general counsel to help take them public. And really excited about the job because, this was one of those companies that everybody said, this is a surefire thing. This is it. Got the job offer. We were talking about, the opportunities. And, I mentioned to the GC, I said, look, the one thing, if I take this job that we have to align on is that I don't work Sundays. And so from midnight Saturday to midnight Sunday, I'm off. I will work until midnight Saturday. I will get up at midnight Sunday and I will work. And, he said, look, I don't think our CEO founder is going to be okay with that. And I said, then I can't take the job. So I passed on that job. And 6 months later, the Match Group job showed up.
Wow.
And so if I'd taken that job, I would have never been eligible for that Match Group job. I wouldn't have had the opportunity.
It's so interesting. Like, I never had these same rules. Yeah. So I always played sports on Sunday.
Sure.
For me, I don't have those same rules around work on Sunday. But what I respect about you is that you live what you believe. You know what I mean? And so I think it's like, and because of that, you've seen God's hand in opening doors that potentially wouldn't have been there. And so I admire people that walk their talk. You know what I mean? And that's always something that, I haven't actually told you that out loud, but it's something that I really admire about you. And obviously it's the culture of your family is like, hey, we're an integrated family and we're not going to say something that we don't live,
Yeah. Look, to me, that's really important. And part of it too is, you talk about things like work-life balance. Like when you're a young associate at a law firm or at an investment bank, or you're a founder, right? You don't have a lot of options, but there are some boundaries I think it's okay to draw. And for me, that was one of those boundaries. So Sundays, and it could be brutal at times, right? I'd get home at midnight.
Yeah.
I'd get up and go to church. And then I'd start working at midnight. I'd get up at around 11 or 10:30 and prepare to start working again.
So that wasn't lip service. That was legit. You were saying, like, I will not let the company down. The company's not going to suffer because of my.
That's exactly right.
Like I'll make it up.
Yep.
But
and the extra
it's
hours.
going to be within these boundaries.
Yeah. And look, to me, I felt more recharged and more able to do my work better.
Yeah.
I could work the whatever it was, hundreds of hours over the course of the month because of the fact that I knew that I had those couple hours on Sunday and that rest. And for me, I think it was really game changing. I look at even my daughter, I think about, she missed a ton of Sunday games. I think about, the wear and tear she would have had on her body otherwise if she had played those games. And so I think there are some benefits. At the end of the day, I think it's to each his or her own.
Yeah.
You know, I don't judge someone if they work on Sunday or they don't work on Sunday. I think that's a personal decision, but it comes down to, you know, draw your boundaries.
Yeah.
Whatever those boundaries are, you know, you and the Lord align, you and your wife align, you and your kids align.
Of course.
And then hold those boundaries,
Yeah.
right? Whatever they are. And I think at the end of the day, when you do that, whatever those are, I think God, your family, others, they end up respecting those, and you end up getting blessed for making those decisions.
These are kind of some tangible, like, relics, but talk to me about kind of the philosophy of faith. Like, how does that fit for you, both how you live your life, how you raise your kids, how you choose your career, decisions you make and don't make? Talk to me about kind of that ethos and how it's guided you.
Yeah, look, to me, faith it's the foundation, right? Everything starts with faith for me. When I'm taking a new job, there's clearly counsel that my wife and I have and our kids have, but there's a lot of counsel with the Lord. Like, hey, is this the right opportunity? Is this the right thing for me to be doing? Is this the right thing for me to be thinking about? One of the things I discovered really early on in my career is that when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do, I won't do anything else until I've spent 30 minutes reading the scriptures.
Wow.
And what I have found, there were times talking about getting up at midnight and starting work. I would get up at midnight. First thing I would do would be to read the scriptures for 30 minutes. And the thing that I found that was amazing is no matter how much work I had to get done before 9 a.m. or whatever time period that was, without fail, I could get it done. Even if it was something that felt like it was going to be 10 hours, I could get it done in whatever limited time slot I had if I prioritized and read my scriptures first. And there were mornings I didn't, and the thing didn't get done.
Yeah.
Every time I did, without fail,
It reminds me of kind of this Stephen Covey big rocks principle of if you put the big rocks in your schedule, that everything else will fit. But if you don't, the things that matter most are at the mercy of some of the things that matter least.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's the cautionary tale in life.
Yeah.
Whatever those things are, that you put the big rocks first, that you put the things in your life that you have decided these matter to me in the schedule, just build them in. And I think that example of like the first thing that I do is this. That's my wife's habit and ritual every day. And I've just seen it benefit our family. Like she shows up better and she leads our family in a way that's like we all get the benefits of her putting the big rocks, first.
Totally agree. And it was one of those things I actually learned in college. I took a Book of Mormon class at BYU, and I would wait until the end of the day because you're required to read every day in the scriptures. I'd wait till the end of the day to read the Book of Mormon. And it was interesting because I would read the scriptures at the end of the day, and I would find all the answers to all of the problems that I'd had during the beginning part of the day. And I was like, well, why am I doing this? This is stupid. I should just read first, and then I'll get all the answers and have them through the rest of the day. And, that's really the way that it's played out for me in my life. There have been some real stressful times. When I was at Match Group, we decided to sue Google over some app ecosystems issues that we had. They take a pretty heavy hand and take a pretty hefty fee from app developers that they deem are digital goods only.
Yeah.
And so we decided, look, we didn't want to turn our customers over. We didn't want to have to raise prices on our customers because Google was coming to us and saying, hey, you got to pay this fee now. So we sued Google.
Kind of like the mafia. They're just
that's what it felt like.
Literally like extracting pound of flesh.
That's exactly what it felt like because they could, right? And where else are you going to go? You only have Apple and Google. And if you're a dating app, you can't just be on iPhones, you have to be on Android phones too, because everybody dates, right? And so otherwise you're cutting off half the population. So we sued him. And I remember, mornings waking up, just with tons of stress on my chest and just thinking, man, this is scary. We've taken on something real big.
When you're going against Google, you're going against like unlimited legal budget.
Unlimited legal budget. I mean, they're bigger than many countries, right? Than a lot of countries. And so you're sitting there thinking to yourself, what have I done at times?
These guys are going to go hire the best attorneys in the world, and they're going to crush me.
Throw every dollar. Yep. That's exactly right. And I would take the time to read my scriptures and just peace. However it goes, it's going to go. And ultimately, Match was able to get a settlement that everybody was happy with. And then one of the parties that had co-filed alongside us their lawsuit went off and beat Google in the antitrust lawsuit. And look, at the end of the day, what it comes down to is those big swings are scary.
Yeah.
But if you're grounded in faith and you feel like it's the right thing to do,
yeah,
the outcome is going to be what it's going to be, and God will support you through it. And that's how I felt through the whole thing.
The thing that like I really respect about you, and I would put my wife in this category, and I would put me on like a different category, which is like I find myself on my knees during crisis, and I get like compelled to be humble. And I wish more, like I aspire to be more proactive with my humility. And when I look at my wife, she does it every day. Where for me, like sometimes I'll like get busy and I kind of move on, and then I'll have some event that literally just brings me to my knees, where I'm like coming to God, just saying like, I need help. And I receive like very direct answers. And most of the time it's like, I'm here, I've been here.
Yeah.
And it's calming, it's assuring, but like the lesson that I just like, my stubborn brain can't seem to internalize is like, I need to be more proactive with it. And even just me hearing this out loud, it's like inspiring me to be more proactive with those habits. Cause that's an opportunity for me that I'm just,
Well, from the outside, you look very proactive. I'll just put it out that way. You look like you do a ton in the community and help a lot.
Yeah, I've got no problem like contributing. Like that's not my thing. I love that. But I think I see the world more as like it's all the same. Business is the same as church, is the same as everything else. People are people. You show up and you serve and you create value, and it's all the same. And like I don't really separate Sunday from Monday, or it's just you show up and you go pour your heart into people, and that's where I like feel the closest to God.
Yeah.
But there are like some simple rituals that, again, I look at my wife and she is bulletproof on these, and my family receives the benefit. And like when I'm listening to this, this is decades of you being consistent with these habits and rituals. And I'm looking at your kids, and I'm looking at your wife, and I'm looking at your career, and I'm looking at the benefits of the life that you've built, and I can't separate the two. Like they have to be intertwined.
Yeah, look, faith to me it's really everything. I mean, I go back to my mission, right? Like I remember being on my mission, being sick, being in Manila, and going to the temple, and having this assurance that everything's going to be okay. Like, and I had no idea what that meant, but just being able to trust in that. And, having that foundation of faith just gives you the license to go forward with peace, right? And people often say to me, they're like, Jared, you're so calm in these, crazy situations. You're suing Google, or you're getting sued by the FTC, or you're, all these crazy things are happening. Or you're doing these mega mergers, and, you're signing on the dotted line for your company. Like, how do you maintain that,
How do you stay grounded?
Yeah, state of mind to be calm and peaceful. And to me, it comes from that faith.
It's that.
I know at the end of the day, God has a plan. It's going to work out.
This is the good stuff right here. No, thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for coming out.
Yeah.
This has been so fun.
Thanks for having me.
I can't believe you've accomplished what you've accomplished at the age that you're at. And it gets me excited to see like what dent you're going to make on the world over the next decade to 2 decades. It just feels like the experience that you've accumulated has prepped you to just make a dent. Like you are in a position to go make an impact, and it's going to be, know that you've got some friends with the boss that are just cheering for you and, cheering your wins. So
we're just trying to, follow in your footsteps, Casey. So, look, it's an exciting, it's been a blessed life, and we've got exciting opportunities ahead. And, at the end of the day, the best part about life is great friends like you guys. So, we appreciate your friendship and the opportunity to be on here.
Thanks for coming out. And also your daughter plays at BYU. She's one of the highest recruited freshman soccer players in the country. She chose BYU.
Yeah.
And so it's, we love having her in town and being able to cheer for her and being able to follow her career. And so, game night tonight. So that's the only reason we caught you is because
Go Cougs.
go Cougs. So anyway, thanks for coming, brother.
Thanks, Casey.